O'clock, the preacher for the First Christian Church that was on the Tipton McBrayer land went up on the stage and asked for everybody's attention. The boys had all left for a spell, and so did their gals. The preacher said they was going to do something real special and called for the boys to come on in. Now they was all gussied up and dressed up in tuxedos and was spick and span, hair combed and all. The preacher said we was going to have us a wedding. Not just one wedding, but 4 at the same time. Buster and Lulu, Jesse and Monique, Walter and Luann, and Hired and Alma Mae decided now was the time to make it official and legal-like in the eyes of the Lord, and whilst all their families and friends was gathered here. Now the band began to play in the wedding march, and all the gals and their paws began to walk down the aisle. Folks was so happy for all of them, and the women commenced to crying, and men folk a beaming from ear to ear. This was sure enough an event to remember. The boys and their beautiful brides gathered in front of the room before the preacher, and he committed to reading the vows. The horrendous explosion shattered the moment of reciting the nuptials. Gunfire erupted everywhere, and people was panicked and running to anywhere they could get cover. The boys weren't hit, and Dalton and Devane rushed to them and said, "We have to get to our weapons." There was guards stationed all around the property, and they was putting up a heck of a fight, but weren't no match for the mercenary army. Mr. Holmes was down behind the bandstand with Aunt Judith and managed to get his sap phone out and call for reinforcements. The local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies was called in, as well as many of the presidential corps that was available. The carnage was horrific. Dalton and Devane and the boys got to their weapons and began to take the fight to the Mercs. You ain't never seen such fighting as them two done. Devane would wade into 4 or 5 of them, whilst Dalton picked them off as they tried to take out Devane. The boys went towards the house and seed it was pretty near about blown apart. The distillery was still in one piece, even though lead was a-flying all over the place. The boys found about 10 or so of the killers huddled up and picking off people right and left. The boys opened up on them and managed to get the jump on them and wipe them out. There was a .30 caliber machine gun on one feller, and Walter grabbed it up and said to follow him. Now, each of the boys give the other cover as they headed for the backside of the mountain at the height of the stream. They had high ground there and could protect the people and defend their position. The boys was making a difference when a mortar round about blowed them to kingdom come. Only reason it didn't, because of the rock formation they was behind and above. The mortar round opened up a hole in the limestone, and the boys fell into a cavity about 5 foot deep. Well, it made a darn good foxhole, I tell you. The shrapnel wounded Walter, and rock chips give all the boys lots of cuts. The machine gun was took up by Buster, and he fired the machine gun till the barrel glowed red hot. Well, Hired and Jesse fired their shotguns and pistols till they run out of ammunition. Buster took a hit in the leg and side, but still kept on a fire until he run out of ammo. The mercenaries was bringing in backup and was bound and determined to get to the boys and kill them. But that wasn't as easy as they thought it'd be. For a while, things calmed down a bit, and Jesse and Hired tended to Buster and Walter. Both of them was dang lucky not to have an artery or bone hit by the bullets. The leg wound of Buster's was pert near superficial. Buster said his chainsaw kicked back and cut him worse than that. Of course, the boys knowed better. Buster's one tough ornery cuss. Said he was finer than frog hair. Walter wasn't no slouch neither, but his shoulder wound was more serious. Dark was coming on the boys. They could hear 'em skulking in the woods and getting ready to rush 'em. Well, Hired up and says to Buster, "Do you remember when I met you the first time up under that little cedar tree with that old galvanized garbage can?" "Sure do, Hired. You was the onlyest friend I had at the time. Old Phil Marks wouldn't let me play with the other young'uns in any of the games. He was always a bullying and hitting on me and laughing about it. I couldn't talk English very good then, if you remember. Czech is about all I knowed, plus a few other lingos Grandpa Gus taught me. Walter, how about your scrapping all the time in school 'cause you was so little?" said Buster. "You ain't so little anymore, are you?" "Well, I pulled your fat out of the fire many a time, even though you would fight a buzzsaw. Skun us a few haids, didn't we?" "Boys, do you remember when Jesse come along and we all got together and made up our pack?" said Howard. "'Twarn't nobody could handle us when we all hooked up and pulled together. "Brothers we are and brothers we remain," hollered Jesse, and jumped up just as a passel of mercenaries charged their foxhole. Well, Buster fired the machine gun with one hand after he reloaded with his and last belt till he run out of shells. Walter emptied his snake pistol. Jesse and Hired used their guns like clubs, and then took to their knives. Now Buster dang near wrapped that machine gun around the feller's head and split it open like a ripe watermelon. One killer was on Jesse about to gut him when Buster grabbed the feller by the neck and dang near jerked it off of his shoulders. Walter put a move on one of the mercs and drove his nose up into his brain, killed him later in the mackerel. Well, Hired cold cocked the merc left behind the ear and laid him out cold, and then he broke his neck with his boot with an axe kick. Well, that saved Buster's bacon right then. There was just too many of them. The boys was fighting with all they had, but was taking licks and collecting more wounds. Finally cornered, overrun, and outmanned, the boys knowed they was about to give up the ghost. Well, Buster had a bayonet and his bowie knife and killed a merc that was about to shoot Hired. Walter was atop Jesse, fighting for all he was worth as Jesse was down. When Walter was tackled by three of the mercenaries, Buster pulled Hired behind him and got in front of him and Jesse. Buster told Hired to save Jesse till your last breath. He's the one that can make the difference. Well, Buster sliced the brisket of one merc and throwed his bayonet and killed another, and giving Walter a fighting chance with the last one. Walter and Buster got back to back and was taking all comers. Walter had his hands full with that bad shoulder and all. A couple of them no-count cusses went after Walter. Buster seen Walter go down to his knees. Four of them rushed Buster, and he simply just picked up one feller and broke his back and used him as a weapon against the other three whilst whistling Dixie. Buster yelled to the boys, "Put your pins in the ground, boys, 'cause we ain't a-running." Buster hollered as he was going down, "Sorry, boys, I just can't take enough of them with me. Get behind me and I'll cover y'all till I can't." Then, with overwhelming numbers, the mercenaries come over the top. Y'all folks have a blessed day. This is old Buster signing out to you. We got more stories coming, and I reckon you'll know what they are and what they go to. See y'all later. Bye now.